All right, everybody. JP the Third with you from Venus Now. We are back with Suzerain. Still toying around with the audio. You'll have to excuse me. We're still trying to figure it out as we go. But hopefully everything is coming in clear on this one. So, picking up where we left off, we still have a few things to figure out with the budget, but I believe we promised to start off with news. The Green Act, a misdirected effort. The Green Act, heavily backed by the PFJP, seems out of touch with the prevailing political climate of the country. It's addressed a disconnect between policymakers and the ordinary Sordish citizens, whose immediate concerns are more likely to center around the economy, job security, and social services. While environmental conservation is important, it should not overshadow the more pressing needs of the people. One hopes future policies will better reflect the realities and priorities of the Sordish people. Attacker opened fire on protesters, 17 dead. A man opened fire in Versor City Center during a protest march organized by the Communist Party of Sordland against the murder of Bernard Circus. The attacker used a military-grade machine gun dated 1929, which is suspected to be part of the inventory of the Sordish Armed Forces. The attacker killed himself right after shooting 25 people, killing 16. He took out the weapon from the newsstand at the square, brandished it and yelled, "Come, I will give you freedom." One witness said the highly charged word freedom was previously associated with Bluish separatists, but has been used widely during the previous month of protests against the murder of Bernard Circus. Minister of the Interior Lily Scroff said that she spoke to the chief of Versor Police and asked him to take strict action. The government will not tolerate any such incident, and the perpetrators will not be spared, she said. So, all of this is kind of to say that the situation is a bit more sensitive now in terms of internal security than it was in the first version of the game. In that one, eventually we will get an act on the red used in the young swords, and back in that game it was a good security measure, but not necessary. It kind of falls off as needed. But here, we may have to put our foot down. Green, a threat to economic growth. The newly proposed Green Act, aimed at nurturing a sustainable industrial approach in Groenie, raised concerns of stifling economic growth. Section 1's stringent regulations on industrial pollution and waste disposal could potentially burden businesses with heavy compliance costs. Though fines will fund environmental recovery projects, the financial strain could outweigh the benefits. While the proposed tax breaks for reducing environmental impact, as outlined in Section 2, appears attractive, they may not compensate for the cost of stricter regulation. Analysis suggests a balanced approach, marrying economic growth with environmental considerations. Leadership crisis. Recent financial distress facing Gaston, one of the pillars of Sordland's economy, highlights a glaring issue at its helm. Our investigation reveals a disconcerting narrative of mismanagement, spearheaded by Errol Alfonso and the current CEO, known to maintain close ties with Minister Munger. Evidently, their leadership characterized by a striking absence of cost-cutting initiatives and measures to enhance operational efficiency. And that's the thing. The Green Act may be a bad idea, but there is currently no structure in place to make them do a better job. And any business that isn't literally forced to do a better job won't. That's just the reality of nature of the market. Gaston, formerly a beacon of economic prosperity, is now struggling under the weight of poor leadership and underscoring the urgent need for a managerial overhaul. Region Oil and Gas expresses interest in Gaston. Rizian Oil and Gas, leading player in the global energy sector, has reportedly expressed an interest in investing in Gaston. This Rizian corporate giant's move could have significant implications for Sordland's domestic energy sector. While this potential investment may raise concerns about foreign influence, it offers a welcome capital injection for Gaston. It will be interesting to observe how this development unfolds and impacts the dynamics of Sordland's energy industry. There's a lot to consider with that. One of the most anticipated matches between FC Gelsword and FC Enrica was postponed because of the intense protests in the city of Enrica. The league has issued the following statement regarding the situation. Due to safety reasons, the players are compromised during this time of trouble. We have decided to postpone the game. Moreover, we stand in solidarity with the fans, our players, and the people of Enrica in this fight against injustice. Mayor Curtin Less has also made a statement. It is a tragic day in Sordland where the president himself refused to act in the face of communism. It is said that inaction breathes out in fear. Thus, I fear that the spread of communism has sown deeper inside the hearts of the nation than we thought. However, I and the people of Enrica will never stop fighting for the soul of our great country. I don't think the mayors or governors are popularly elected. I don't know. I need to look into that. Oh, so he was elected at the very least. Well, initially he was elected. Then he was appointed. Well, he was elected in Benfi, then appointed in Enrica. So, and then re-elected again. It gets complicated. Let's just leave it there. The proposed Green Act, championed by forward-thinking members of the Assembly, could be a transformative step for Sordland. The Act, if signed by President Rayne, would introduce stricter regulations on industrial pollution and waste disposal, providing a much-needed push towards environmental responsibility. Particularly in Gruny, businesses that fail to meet these standards would face fines, the revenue of which would contribute to environmental recovery projects. Simultaneously, those demonstrating significant reductions in their environmental impact would enjoy tax breaks. The creation of a small investment fund for eco-friendly practices represent a pioneering approach to industrial sustainability. It's high time we put the environment at the heart of our policymaking. We urge President Rayne to sign this crucial legislation. We are going social democrat this route too. Sordland has an electoral, this is about the threshold. Yeah, Sordland has an electoral threshold of 10%. This means any political parties that are under 10% of the vote can't even enter the assembly. This is the very reason why the United Sordland Party holds 52% of the seats in the assembly today. It is also the reason why the largest ethnic minority of Sordland is non-existent in Sordish politics, which is a fair criticism. It's fair. I mean, what's keeping us in power is fundamentally undemocratic. A recent report on workers' rights released by a reformist faction within the Continental Security Pact has stirred international discourse, attracting both considerable attention and critical skepticism. While the report offers an ostensibly comprehensive overview of labor conditions within CSP member nations, critics argue that the data could benefit more from a more nuanced and detailed analysis. The CSP's assertive claims of surpassing global standards in terms of minimum wages and unionization rates is a contention that invites closer scrutiny. It remains essential to distinguish between stated policy objectives and the actual situation on the ground, considering the complexity of labor dynamics. The debate underlines the need for transparency in evaluating such claims and reinforces the importance of independent verification. Agreed. The Geopolitico may be my favorite publication in this game. They are, I'm a foreign policy nerd on the front end already, but they're very straightforward, very sober, and it's kind of just what you need to know and a kind of a very straightforward analysis of what's happening in the world. And that's all the news. Iraq is taking steps towards diversifying its economic portfolio with a keen focus on investing in energy exporting nations. This approach not only indicates Iraq's intent to strengthen its economic stability, but also underlines its foresight in recognizing the burgeoning value of energy sectors worldwide. Additionally, Iraq appears to be charting an innovative path by expressing a commitment to financially support nations outside of the ambit of ATO and CSP influence. So this is the game flatly telling us that depending on what we do with gas, we could make quite a bit of money. Is Anraka on the map? Is Rithia, Kurut? Okay, so the Rithian Oil and Gas Company has extended a co-investment proposal for Sordland's ambition Gassam Energy Venture. King Walmuth emphasized the bilateral benefits of such a cooperation and its potential in bolstering the region's energy security. He also stressed that this collaborative venture could form a bedrock of a stronger economic alliance, further binding our nations. But they're also allied with the larger GRACE organization, the Alliance of Monarchies. And there's nothing to say that that won't bite us in the ass. In an emphatic display of international solidarity, the Arcadian Treaty Organization has committed significant financial and military aid to Enolia, located in the heart of Eastern Marcopa, a region rife with geopolitical complexities. Enolia stands at the crossroads of economic challenges and potential security threats from Rumburg and Volksland. We knew that was coming. Let's hit a few reports before we head over to Narble. Many members of the USP, led by Alban Clavin and the reformist wing of the party, clarified their demands from the government in the party Congress. For the coming constitutional reform, Alban Clavin stated that without ministry reforms, they won't be able to stand behind the new reform package. SSC project manager for the L1 Railway has reported that the project has been progressing well, and they already started laying down the foundations of the ground retaining walls, bricks, and tracks. Project supervisors from the government confirmed the report, saying that most of the preliminary work has already been done by the SSC. However, the government officials added that there were a couple of delays related to the transportation of construction material, which were not included in the SSC's report. We'll have to get a look at that. Yesterday, around 11 a.m., a prison riot started in Ward C of Antel Rock Prison, which was eventually suppressed. Ward C is generally used for keeping political prisoners, and the riot started when a warden was killed by a British political prisoner. 4 guards and 21 prisoners died, 134 were injured. The mayor of Morna has reported that their industrial output numbers this year are 12% lower than last year. They're requesting additional support to improve their industrial capacity, including machinery and personnel, to combat the downward trend. With the construction of several new factories in Morna, the mayor stated his belief that an economic upturn in the city is still possible if the government investments succeed. That'll be something to consider, because we should be picking up fairly soon on a secondary investment project. Last time we did Agland, which tied into our peace treaty with Agnolia. We have options. Let's not put our foot in our mouth. Anyway, Narble. I was traveling to the snow-covered city of Narble in the Nargis region for the Rural Development Forum organized by the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education. The mountainous city of Narble had gritty tones to it. It was mostly regarded as one of the poorest cities in Sordland. Its people were hardy and wary. Even after the discovery of natural resources in the area, years of neglect by the central government were apparent on the buildings and general infrastructure. Natural resources, namely gas and oil, were now under the control of Gasum, which elevated the corporation to a place of power. My task in this forum was mainly symbolic: fake smiles and handshakes with oil barons, meeting with local politicians, but most importantly of all, making sure Narble didn't feel like it was forgotten by the government. The scenery so far, however, was a reflection of Narble's neglect. Main roads to the city were not maintained well. There were many bumps and empty, discolored spots in the asphalt. Navigating and swerving to avoid the inconveniences, our motorcade finally started nearing the city. As if my discomfort from the bumpy ride was apparent to him, Sergei rolled down the partition window. "We'll be arriving at Hotel West in a few minutes, sir." "Thank you for letting me know." "Anytime. It's my duty." After a moment, Sergei started to smile under his mustache. "How is life, Sergei?" "Sir, I just wanted to say, it has been great these last 2 months. As you know, my wife Susan recently gave birth to our son, sir, and now my daughter just started at a very good high school in Hosort." "It's great news, Sergei. I'm happy for you." "I appreciate it, sir. Truly, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to afford a good private school if she scored less in the entrance exams. But I shouldn't have made my insecurity get to me. Enrique outsmarts me all the time. I'm very proud to have a daughter like her." "I too hope that Diana will grow to be like her mother someday." "I'm sure she will, sir. After all, she is the daughter of a lion and a lioness. My daughter looks up to the First Lady for inspiration, and it's not just limited to my daughter, sir. She is an inspiration for almost all women in the country. But at the same time, it must be hard for the First Lady as well. All this attention, adjusting to the new high-profile life, and a husband that has great responsibility." "You're right. It is hard for her." "It must be, sir. We must sometimes forget the important people in life between all the responsibility and rush. You know, those we care for." "I agree." Sergei continued after a moment of silence. "Have I told you, sir, we named my son George. The doctor said he's very healthy, and thankfully so is my wife." "Tell me more about Susan. What kind of person is she?" "She has a good heart. Her family comes from Sarna, so they're a little more traditional. She's beautiful, of course, but what I really admire is her selflessness. Selflessness is a respectable trait to have. It should be mutual. That is what matters most. Take it aside. I've already started thinking about their university education, especially Erica. I want to send her to a good private school, but with the current state of the economy, it's going to be hard for us. We will fix the economy, one way or another. If anyone can, that's you, Mr. President. The car hits a major pothole and a bump, which lifted us up in our seats for a second time. Now, in the previous version of the game, we had enough money. Like, at this point, we have more than enough money to split with Sergei. But if I remember correctly, the investment in the stock left us very little room to maneuver. So I think we only had one personal wealth to start with, and we could choose to invest in the stock or not. So it's not like we had a lot of money to throw around and we didn't even get the option to consider. So this is unacceptable. We need to invest in the infrastructure here. I agree, sir. We still need to drive back tomorrow unless you use one of those new helicopters. The motorcade began approaching the hotel. The Hotel West was supposedly the best hotel in Narble. The large 24-story main building was undoubtedly one of the taller and more expensive buildings in the city. It towered over the nearby slums and had been a target for protests when it was first built. A crowd was gathered in front of the hotel with the welcoming committee at its center. As we approached the red carpeted entrance, I could see the mayor of Narble and his top aides. Sergei got out of the car and opened the door. He bowed his head respectfully and gestured towards the entrance. Thank you. Have a good day, Mr. President. As soon as I left the vehicle, the fresh air of Narble filled my lungs. Almost immediately, everyone present in the crowd flocked over to me with an excessive display of courtesy, smiles, and handshakes while I donned the mask of a politician, a mask I was very used to. Young source suspected of terror attack. During a rally of the left-wing Communist Party Sordland, the attackers suspected to be working with the Unswords or another organization connected to them opened fire with an automatic rifle on the protesting civilians. This is legitimately just getting out of hand. Franz Rector, leader of the PFJP, recently outlined their demands for the reform package. He declared that without the implementation of term limits and limited decrees, it would be very difficult for him and his party to stand behind the reform package. Protests appear calmer. Nationwide protests persist, albeit with a slight reprieve in tensions around some cities. Isolated incidents of violence were reported on Monday night in a few major cities, notably Dyer and Lochvin, amidst the prevailing unrest. Keep that in mind. Education privatization proved successful. Our editorial team immediately analyzed the SIPO report, SIPA, recently revealed to assess the standards of education. We were curious to see how the policies of the last decade have begun changing the performance metrics. Lesbia specifically stood out with a jump of 6 positions towards 5th out of 68. After a research and analysis collaboration with the Vice President of Magnus Cartus and the SME8 chapter leader of OMAC, we gathered critical insights to how Lesbia increases education quality. It boiled down to 2 major points. One is the privatization efforts led by Prime Minister Alvarez that led to most schools in wealthier neighborhoods, 1,404 to be precise, to be privatized. This lifted a significant budget burden off the state because the wealthy paid for a great education for their kids. It was still taxed reasonably in order to divert funds to start schools elsewhere. The second major factor was the allowance of minor curricular changes for private institutions that led to major improvements in student participation, teacher happiness, and boosted the performance of the institution. All in all, the improvements to the system and the massive amount of 34 billion lira it raised for Lesbia made it a lucrative option. Sordland desperately needs more capital to tackle the recession, and when education is privatized, foreign capital will also aid in establishing quality schools. Saul needs to answer for his crimes, not in this run-through. Shocking misogynist rally. Every day, we are appalled by how deep the roots of misogyny goes in our country. We were appalled again when, yesterday, during a protest by the Sordish League of Women, counter-protesters showed up to disrupt the peaceful rally. In the resulting scuffle between the police, the protesters, and the mob, many were arrested from both sides. And we had a labor rights movement, labor rights march as well. Now, depending on where we are with the budget, we may be able to invested a lot. Because we haven't had too many. We're starting from a much stronger budgetary position, all things considered. But we'll have to see exactly how we land. Privatization simply isn't an option if we can avoid it. Health and education have to remain under the auspices of the state, which means we'll have to invest in both. We may have to run a tiny deficit, but that's just the nature of the business, and hopefully we'll get adequate remuneration if we do. I arrived at the meeting room for my talk with Ciara and Pascal. Before beginning, I took a moment to appreciate the view from the balcony. The mountains of Narwhal was completely covered with snow. While I was mesmerized by the scenery, Pascal Benewall walked up to me. My Minister of Health was, ironically, somewhat portly, having gained a few pounds since his breakthrough as a best-selling writer. But his authority on social affairs could not be questioned. Such a spectacular view. Ciara Walda, the Minister of Education, joined us on the balcony, dressed in a sky blue pantsuit. Her preference for trousers over dresses had made her the subject of much palace gossip, but it didn't seem to bother her in the slightest, because she does not give a shit. She's also just a rabid communist. Spectacular indeed. But if you look at the opposite direction, you'll see what Saul's decades of neglect did for the city. Most of the people living in Narwhal are workers, farmers, and their wives and children. They're breaking their backs for close to no pay, all thanks to greedy corporations. Well, we are leaning more to the left. My intention is to help the working class. I'm glad we see eye to eye on the issue. If you look past the view, you can see the real problems. Real problems like poverty. Pascal nodded gravely. This was a subject he knew quite a bit about himself. His best-known books were about the plight of the Sordish less fortunate, drawing from his own past growing up in squalor. Well put, Miss Walda. I don't need to tell you about my own experience with poverty, and you've been through similar hardship yourself, Mr. President. It feels like the cards are stacked against you. Exactly. It feels like as if there is no way out. You don't have to be born poor to sympathize with the plight of the impoverished, much like you don't have to have been born a woman to recognize Sordland's need for parity among the sexes. Parity among the sexes shouldn't be our first priority. Look at how many high-ranking female politicians our country has. Appearances could be deceiving, Pascal. Her voice sounded bitter. Think about how Lilias Graff got to her current position. I don't necessarily believe the rumors about her and Saul, but she never could have risen so high if she didn't parrot its cause. Gloria Torre isn't an accident that the first female assembly speaker is such a staunch conservative. And then there was Alfonso's habit of promoting women to prominent positions to give Sordland a progressive sheen while accomplishing nothing in reality. While women in places like Narwhal are denied any opportunity to advance, the government can use a handful of female politicians Wow. Let me get that right. The government can use a handful of female politicians from wealthy families, myself included, to pretend their only obstacle to success is their own lack of initiative. Meanwhile, those of us who don't use our clout to help powerful men stay in power are denigrated as angry spinsters. I ask you, Mr. President, does anyone care that your strategist, Mr. Glade, doesn't have a wife? I don't think that's any of our business, quite frankly. I wonder if she'd say if we kind of go with her in that direction. Because I think last time we just said, because I support Lucian wholeheartedly. He is literally one of the smartest people in the cabinet. But I've been warning about that, actually. Alright, Ciara, you made your point. As I was saying, isn't it about time Holstead addressed this country's real issues, rather than bowing to the wishes of the hawks and fearmongers in the establishment and diverting yet more resources to the military and law enforcement? Our welfare, healthcare, and education systems have been decaying since the recession. Sordland's poorer communities are losing hope. Hopelessness and lack of opportunity can drive people to extreme solutions. We're seeing increased crime, domestic violence, and yes, rising inequality between men and women. Those issues must be tackled from different directions. We need to engage it holistically. I'm planning to help by using an increased budget to improve the quality of healthcare. That could prove useful, but we need to be doing a lot more. Education has similar issues. There is another subject I want to mention. I have been working on improving the rights of workers in our country, and I have proposed a draft bill that is currently being reviewed by our party. Mr. Clavin has already backed me and given his support. Sordland has fallen behind most countries on the subject, and it's my responsibility to ensure that it's not the case. There's always room for improvement, and it's good to hear that you are pushing for it. I appreciate the kind words, Mr. President. I will not let you down. And it's also a matter of life and death. Every decade we hear of some horrific accident due to employers' disregard for their workers' safety. So, would you back the bill when it arrives on your desk, Mr. President? I'll be very interested in supporting it once it is finished. I'm relieved to hear this. He smiled. It's getting a little cold out here. Let's head inside and continue our discussions. We headed back inside. The meeting room was already prepared for state business. Small gifts for each of us had been placed on a table by the municipality. We took our seats. Let's start with your health overview, Pascal. As you wish, Mr. President. Sordland has a free healthcare system except for a few private hospitals operating under it. Most of the populace receive adequate treatment. Health issues primarily appear in rural areas due to the lack of quality services. I'm doing my best to ensure that citizens of all ages receive the best healthcare they can. I also personally want to solve the high infant and maternal mortality problem. How many doctors and nurses are employed? We have 31,594 doctors and 37,680 nurses working for the Ministry of Health. That is a high number. What I think is, I don't want to be rude, but out of those numbers, how many are in urban and in rural areas? Good points here. Pascal? The data show that per 10,000 people in urban areas, there are about 11 doctors, while in rural areas, there are only 3. Treatment time is still too high due to the low number of doctors in rural areas, which barely get any proper coverage. How many hospital beds are there per 10,000 citizens? There are 10 beds per 10,000 citizens, which is a very good number according to our comparisons with other neighbors. We see a lower number in countries of Agnolia and Valen, but obviously can't match Lesbia or Volkland. Agnolia and Valen are hardly countries to take as a standard, but it is good to know we aren't in a huge health crisis yet. What is the life expectancy and mortality rates? Our life expectancy is 65 years, and the infant mortality rate is a worrying 85% per 1,000 births, while our maternal mortality is at 90 per 1,000. Be assured we are doing everything we can to save mothers and their newborn. Those numbers are saddening indeed. I agree. We must do everything we can. We're working very hard on improving the quality of the services. Thank you, Pascal. Your in-depth briefing is much appreciated. I want to hear about the education system. With pleasure. She's been waiting all day for this. Sordish education is free, but we have a very outdated system that I want to reform. The other important issue is the lack of access to education in rural areas, especially for young girls. Your administration has the power to solve both problems. My highest priority is to get enough funding to be able to build schools in rural areas while I cleanse our national education system of its nationalistic indoctrination and sexist teachings. You know she just speaks all of this fast and really to the point. What is the literacy rate in Sordland? The literacy rate in Sordland is at 80%. This is a very good indicator for future growth, but it needs to increase. It is also far lower among girls than boys. If I remember correctly, the most illiterate areas are Bergia and Odland. That is correct, although Lochvin skews the statistics for the Nordic region, which also has a vast number of illiterate citizens. This underlines my point about the lack of access to education. How many students and teachers do we have? Currently, there are about 5 million students, 3 million in primary education, 1 million in secondary, and 1 million in tertiary. There are 155,316 teachers. Sordland is full of young and bright minds. It is indeed full of potential. I think there needs to be a change in the way of thought. We should help children to question and educate themselves. Tell me about the differences between urban and rural education. Urban areas have three times the number of schools per 10,000 people compared to rural areas. Rural areas also suffer from a lack of teachers. I can imagine teachers not preferring desolate areas for work. Salaries for teachers are very low here. We need to increase their pay and give them more incentives. Thank you, Ciara. I can fill in the blanks from here. I believe that is everything. Ciara stood up and moved towards the window. She took a deep breath. What is it, Ciara? Look at this impoverished city. The streets full of potholes, the hospital's barely functioning, the school half open. This is not just about Sol or even Alfonso failing. This decay in Sordland's forgotten regions has been going on for many decades due to structural corruption, which is fueled by capitalism. We'll lay it into the red just a little bit here. We're here to change that trend and provide for the people. That remains to be seen. I'm working on the new education system and your support will be welcome. Ciara sat back down the side. One way or another, we need to transform. Greed and unchecked capitalism will not magically provide for the people. Tell me more about your plans, Ciara. My plans require an increase in the government budget. I am to solve the problems we highlighted with the allocated money. By building schools in these less fortunate rural areas and through fundamental changes to the education system, I will unlock the potential of all our children, boys and girls alike. Improving the situation in rural areas is a good idea. The investment would be the future of Sordland. Imagine the untapped potential of the youth unlocked, the knowledge and wealth they will generate. Won't the promotion of private education help create additional funds? Yes, but at what cost? I'm not a supporter of the private sector. I'm not a supporter of the private sector in education. Because at the end of the day, they are focused on profit first. What are you working towards, Pascal? I personally want to improve the low quality of healthcare in the rural areas. So I created a draft plan to increase the salary of doctors and to upgrade the equipment of the hospitals. I can do with an increased budget. Additionally, a privatization plan to promote private investments in the healthcare system could allocate more extra funds. I personally promise that our health systems were to improve in our term. I personally promise that our health systems were to be improved in our term. I fully support you, Pascal. This is one of the reasons I'm optimistic about the upcoming budget debates. With enough funds, we can build hospitals where necessary and expand the quality of our services. I do hope to create competition and increase the quality of healthcare with the privatization effort. A private healthcare system would increase the price of treatment and make access worse for the average citizen. Besides, I believe we have decided to promote a more planned economy. My expectation from our government is that we understand and focus on the needs of the people. We are elected representatives of our people and we will prioritize their needs. That's reassuring to hear. I don't want to sound cynical, but almost all governments keep making the same promises. We must show we are different through our actions. Did we cover all the necessary subjects? I wish to raise my concerns about your scheduled meeting with the GASM chairman and former president, Mr. Alfonso. There are significant considerations regarding the Narbonne workforce and the broader community of GASM's blue-collar employees. This could be a strategic juncture to secure a triumph for the labor force. While I don't intend to overstep, I can't refrain from commenting on the labor predicaments experienced by the workers in GASM positions. Nevertheless, it is worth acknowledging that the corporation contributes substantially to job creation in a region struggling with poverty. Persuading the chairman to make concessions might prove to be a formidable task. Engaging with Alfonso can be challenging, yet we should be prepared to listen to their concerns, even in the most adverse scenarios. Adopting the diplomatic and attentive approach while seeking viable solutions could yield the most favorable outcome. I agree. The matter regarding laborers is close to my heart. I would personally be grateful if you would be able to resolve the concerns raised by Katarina Horton and other laborers. It would be difficult to imagine someone like Alfonso, who's obsessed with his corporation, give benefits to workers without him personally gaining from it. In this world, nothing is truly free. I wouldn't anticipate anything less. We must be cautious about these seemingly generous offers. Beneath the surface, they usually come with hidden costs that further tip the scales in favor of the privileged few. Despite the potential divergence in interest, the door of dialogue among differing sides should always remain open. It's important that ideology doesn't obscure our capacity to bring tangible, effective transformation. Balancing different viewpoints is never easy, but it's crucial for finding common ground. We shall keep you no longer. Thank you both for the discussion. I do hope we won't repeat the same mistakes again and again. Have a good day, Mr. President. The ministers left, and I prepared to leave for other official business in the city. The agenda for the next few days was busy. It also included a meeting with Minister Gus Monger and former President Alfonso at the Gasson branch office. As I made my way out, the weather was noticeably cold, but it didn't keep a group of USP supporters from coming out to cheer us on the streets. By looking at the citizens' attire, it was easy to understand the current state of Narble. Some people were wearing clothes a few sizes too large. Some kids didn't even have shoes. Yet there was hope in their eyes. They were excited to see the president in their city. Got there. Our Grand National Assembly has demonstrated a resounding commitment to Sordland's economic independence. The proposed repeal of the Energy Protection Act of 1932, a cornerstone of our national autonomy, was effectively defeated. The stalwart defense of our sovereignty by Gloria Torre and Ciara Walda is commendable. They actually praised the fascists. Lovely. The proposed repeal of the Energy Protection Act of 1932 was put to a vote in the Assembly today, resulting in its defeat. Despite strong advocacy from the reform factions of the PFJP and beyond, including within the USP under Alban Clavin, the majority of the Assembly, led by the USP and NSP, voted against repeal 179 to 71. It got crushed. Consequently, the Energy Protection Act of 1932 remains a force maintaining the status quo of foreign ownership, restricting foreign ownership restrictions of energy companies in Sordland. This result concludes the current attempt to modify the foreign ownership regulation, but does not preclude further legislative efforts or any initiative by the executive. Ciara Walda, leader at NFP, has announced today that the NFP is completely against any threshold reforms. He specifically emphasized that this will lead to unwanted elements entering the Assembly, and he is outright against any changes to the 2% threshold. We don't need you anyway. The Workers' Rights Act of 1954, proposed by Alban Clavin and supported by Minister of Health Pascal Benoit, has been prepared for the first draft review. Voices from the labor union showed strong signs of support. A session dedicated to the bill in the Assembly proved contentious. The people that form the backbone of the Sordish economy will finally be fully protected by extensive laws, Katarina Horton said, receiving both cheers and boos. A coal mine has collapsed in Morble. Emergency response teams were dispatched immediately due to the sheer size of the disaster. Additional manpower and supplies were requested from nearby cities. Initial investigation shows that an underground fire has started due to the neglect in working situations by the native mining group. The current death toll is at 82 and counting. President Walker visited Lesbia last week to engage in talks with Prime Minister Alvarez concerning the establishment of Arcasian military bases within Lesbia. Following conclusions of the discussion, agreement was reached between the two leaders regarding a significant military defense investment in Lesbia. As part of the agreement, a large military base will be constructed on Ravnos Island. The base will be equipped with Arcasian radar and anti-air systems for enhanced security. Additionally, Arcadia plans to deploy a dozen M3 ballistic missiles. The base is expected to accommodate approximately 200 strategic bombers and jet fighters, along with an estimated 20,000 Arcasian soldiers. One more big deep breath on this one. A lot of reports to clear. In a pivotal meeting convened in Hale, leaders of the CSP have gathered to discuss the intricate issue of Helgi land sovereignty, a matter tinged with historical complexity. The assembly recalled the 1920s Agnolian annexation of the island during Volkswagen Revolution, underscoring their commitment to address past missteps and ensure a future that respects the rights and aspirations of citizens and inhabitants. Labor strike in Gassam. Blue-collar workers in Gassam and Narble has initiated a labor strike. This industrial action followed disagreements over wages, workers' conditions, and workers' rights. The strike has resulted in a temporary disruption of Gassam's operations. The duration of the strike and the potential impact on Narble's local economy are currently uncertain. So, in Narble, the Communist Party of Sordland and Labor Union of Sordland have organized a strike against Gassam. Prominent figures Katarina Horton of LSU and Dennis Stowler of CPS, the Communist Party, have confirmed their participation. The impact on the strike of Gassam's operation and the wider political climate in Narble remains to be seen. Young source member found decapitated. Jesus. The Estor Police Department has found a decapitated body in the abandoned house where the victim was later identified as Krug Linke, a high school teacher, a member of the local Young Swords Cultural Center. The victim was discovered to be tortured with hot iron rods before his tongue was cut off. Police suspect the radios are responsible for this incident. The incident has not been made public. Yeah, for good damn reason. So, we've got labor negotiations. There is a chance that I'm just noticing, I don't remember in the last game the details of the different cities being quite like this. That is pretty. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. So what we're going to do, because I think they all originally look like that. But we're going to put a pin in it here. And when we come back, we'll engage with the meeting with Munger and Alfonso. There may be a chance to negotiate the current labor strike at that time, which is why I'm putting a pin in it here. But still quite a lot of content, considering we just had one meeting and a bunch of reports. And a lot of decisions will have to be made soon on the budget. Anyway, leave a like on the video if you have enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. And we will be back with a pretty substantial decision to make. I'll catch y'all in that one.